I know what you're gonna say. Duh. Easter is on March 31st. It says it on the calendar. You stupid. It's really mean. Why would you call me that? But I don't mean when is Easter 2024. I mean, how do I know when Easter is on any given year? See, when it comes to scheduling holidays, there are three primary categories that I've made up. First, you have your fixed dates. Now, much like my dearly departed friend Slarry after he fell into a body mangling device under mysterious circumstances that can't be legally proven, they don't move. New Year's is always on January 1st, Halloween is always on October 31st, and 9/11 is always on September 11th. Then you have holidays that need a little riddle to figure out when to celebrate. The first Monday of September is Labor Day. The fourth Thursday of November is Thanksgiving. And the fourth day after the first full week of the ninth month of the year is 9/11. But when the hell is Easter? All I can confidently say about Easter is that it's on a Sunday, sometime in spring, but beyond that, who can say? Maybe it isn't actually a big mystery. Maybe everyone else knows exactly when Easter is and how to tell what day it's going to fall on each year, and you're going to call me a stupid about it, and I really wish you would stop. Now, admittedly, I didn't have a very religious upbringing, but I did download that Jesus Speaks as app a few years ago, and I think I know most of the important stuff.
I have never sinned. My favorite color is burnt sienna. I am the opposite of Satan.
Oh, but I really want to figure this out. By the end of this video, I will be able to tell you any year when Easter Sunday is. Now, are there other religious holidays that are seemingly just as capricious with when they're celebrated as Easter? Yeah, there's Ramadan, Rosh Hashanah, probably a few others that I don't know about. So why am I only focusing on Easter? Are you a cop? Okay, right. Easter. From now on, this is a serious, informative, educational video. You're gonna learn something. I'm not gonna do any goofs or bits. Definitely no japes, not after what happened last time. No. This is serious. No jokes. So according to ancient Christian mythology, Jesus was killed after celebrating the Jewish holiday of Passover. This was, generally speaking, a big deal. 3 days later, he comes back to life. This is Easter. Simple enough. You're with me so far. Well, it turns out, the first few hundred or so years of Christianity is a few hundred or so years of people constantly asking each other, when the hell is Easter? Originally, ancient Christians want to celebrate Easter based on a canonical order of events. Jesus was killed after celebrating Passover, so Passover starts, wait a couple of days, then Easter. A little gauche to have the big Christian holiday take place during the big Jewish holiday that was there first, I agree. Take it up with Jesus. He could have waited a few weeks, it still would have been impressive. So, if you're an ancient Christian, and you're trying to figure out when the hell is Easter, you first need to figure out when the hell is Passover. And here's a question for you. When the hell is Passover? Okay, so Passover is a Jewish holiday that takes place over the course of 8 days. Fortunately, it's very simple to know when Passover is, because it's one of those fixed date holidays, and it always begins on the 14th of Nisan. When the hell is Nisan? I'm so glad you asked. It's good to be curious. Nisan is the first month of the Jewish calendar, which is based on a lunar cycle. Its months are intended to line up with how long it takes the moon to go through all of its phases, new moon to new moon. The calendar most of the world uses is based on a solar cycle, which is how long it takes the Earth to go around the sun. Well, okay, the Jewish calendar is also based on how long it takes to orbit the sun. It turns out humans like recognizing patterns. It's why our music is based on repeating measures, why the third item in a list is usually the funny one. So ancient humans looked up in the sky and noticed that it goes through these consistent light and dark cycles, which is a good starting point for keeping track of time. We should call that a day. They also noticed that the moon tends to change shape, and it consistently takes about 30 of these days for it to cycle through all these shapes. It's a good next step. Let's call this a month. Well, if you're an ancient human designing a calendar, you also want it to line up with the seasons, so you can plan your crops, predict weather patterns, and I can't overstate how critical all of this is for understanding when Easter is. The sad news is the solar system and the physics that govern things like the rotation of the Earth, the orbit of the moon around the Earth, or the Earth around the sun, don't really care that much about the human desire to make calendars. So while it takes about 365 days for the Earth to orbit the sun, the moon cycles don't neatly fit into that 365 days, and the moon will go through 12 complete cycles in about 355 days. So, if you try to keep your calendar based on these lunar cycles, over a few years it'll gradually fall more and more out of sync with the solar cycle, which again, is pretty important. This is why if you look at your calendar, the Jewish holidays are never consistent each year, because the Jewish calendar has fewer days per year. It's also why the Jewish calendar has a holy month to periodically resynchronize itself with the solar year. The earliest Christians had already adopted the fancy new Julian calendar, which is a solar calendar based on 365 days in a year with an extra leap day every 4 years. Sounds familiar? As we established, these two calendars don't tend to play well together over time, and eventually, Christians decide they don't want to keep having to ask Jews, when the hell is Passover, so they could know when the hell is Easter, and wanted to be more independent. The next few centuries are a mess if you're trying to figure out when the hell is Easter. There wasn't really an established rule, no one is on the same page, they're just doing it whenever feels right. Then, in the year 325, Christians organized the First Council of Nicaea, introducing patch notes to Christianity to disambiguate a few things in the lore, such as when Easter is celebrated. They wanted it to be uniform among all Christians. It's kind of like when Yu-Gi-Oh! Eventually added problem-solving card text to make the effects easier to interpret, because before that, no one could tell when an effect started a chain or when something was a cost. Oh, you don't know what I'm talking about? So up until 2011, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game was pretty inconsistent with its verbiage throughout cards, which can cause a bit of confusion when understanding how some cards interact with each other. Let's say you have a card like Lord of D. I'm not going to make a penis joke, I'm not a hack. Lord of D's effect says Dragon-type monsters cannot be targeted by spell, trap, or monster effects that specifically designate a target. Okay, what does it mean to specifically designate a target? If you summon Luster Dragon, can I activate my set Trap Hole? I'm not going to make a whole joke, but that's unrelated to whether or not I'm a hack. Trap Hole doesn't say it targets, but it does. What about Bottomless Trap Hole, which has almost the same effect as Trap Hole? Surely that shouldn't work, but it does, because Bottomless Trap Hole doesn't target. Luster Dragon cannot be destroyed by Sekirotsu Armor, but it can be destroyed by Mirror Force. But none of these cards say if they target, because there wasn't uniform phrasing. Magic Jammer has you discard a card to negate the activation of a spell card. If you discard Beige, Vanguard of Dark World, whose effect says that it special summons itself if it's discarded to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon it, right? Wrong. Because discarding is a cost to activate Magic Jammer, not the effect of Magic Jammer. But in the case of card destruction, you can special summon Beige, because discarding is the effect, not a cost. But if instead of Beige, you discard the Fabled Ganashia, it'll special summon regardless of whether it was for Magic Jammer or card destruction. Problem-solving card texts introduce uniform wording to resolve these issues by, among other things, always specifying when a card targets for its effect, and separating activation requirements and costs from card effects by way of colons and semicolons respectively. This is what the Council of Nicaea did for the Bible. Christians really wanted Easter to be after the vernal equinox, which is when the sun is in line with the Earth's equator. Why did they want this? I don't know. What do you want from me? Do I look like a video essayist? No, I don't. I'm writing this video with 15 Wikipedia tabs open. I'm not even good at Wikipedia. For some reason, 5 of those tabs are all for Passover. This isn't an educational video. I'm not here to teach you anything. What do you think this is? School? The problem with the vernal equinox is, like Passover, it doesn't exactly fall on a consistent day each year. In 2024, it'll be on March 19th, but in 2025, it'll be on March 20th. So the Council of Nicaea decided to make up a uniform date for the vernal equinox, even if it isn't always the actual vernal equinox, and that day is March 21st, otherwise known as the ecclesiastical equinox, otherwise known as close enough, I guess. We're almost there. Even though they wanted to be able to calculate the date of Easter independent of the Jewish calendar, Christians still wanted to pay homage to their roots in observing Easter based on when Passover is. With the Jewish calendar having months based on the lunar cycle, again, new moon to new moon, this would have the 14th of Nicaea fall on the eve of the full moon, and again, Easter would take place after this. So, the new rule, which is the one that's still used now, is that Easter is on the first Sunday after the first full moon, which is on or after the vernal equinox, which is approximated as March 21st. Therefore, the first full moon after March 21st, 2024 is Monday, March 25th. And the first Sunday after that is March 31st, which your calendar says is Easter. Settled. We all know when Easter is. Now, could I have gone into all the algorithms to figure out when Easter is going to be on any given year? Sure, but that seems really hard. I don't even like putting this much effort into a video. Have you seen how long the date of Easter Wikipedia page is? Have you seen the videos I'm usually making? I have better things to do with my time than keep explaining Easter to you. Orthodox Easter. When the hell is Orthodox Easter? Now, you probably think that this is the part of the video where I start to act like I'm losing my mind. You've seen a YouTube video before, you know how it goes, where a guy spends a bunch of time explaining something in depth and then, oh no, plot twist, there's more, there's a second Easter. And then I get all disheveled and start acting like Charlie in the Pepe Sylvia scene. But no, not me. I'm always shoveled. This isn't complicated. I'm not going to pretend like it is. This is all very straightforward. I know you can follow along, but I need you to focus. If you're not a member of an Eastern Orthodox church, you might be confused about why there's a second Orthodox Easter listed on the calendar, usually a few weeks after the Easter you or people you may know celebrate. Actually, even if you are a member of an Eastern Orthodox church, you might still be confused about it. Orthodox Easter follows the same rules as the other Easter, which is that it's the first Sunday after the first full moon, on or after the ecclesiastical equinox. So, why isn't it on March 31st? It's because Orthodox churches are, at least for the purposes of determining the dates of religious holidays, still stubbornly using an older, out-of-date calendar that has long been abandoned by other churches and, well, the rest of the world. Like, you know how some people don't like modern Yu-Gi-Oh mechanics, so they only play with self-imposed format restrictions because that's how they played when they were 10? So originally, the Yu-Gi-Oh card game had a space on the playing field called the Fusion Deck, where special fusion monster cards would be kept until they could be summoned. These weren't used much since the method to summon fusion monsters was slow, cumbersome, and not usually worth the investment. In 2008, this would be renamed to the Extra Deck to coincide with the introduction of new Synchro monster cards, and later, Xyz and Link monster cards, all of which would also be kept in the Extra Deck until summoned, along with Pendulum monster cards, which would go face up in the Extra Deck when destroyed but be kept in the main deck otherwise. These were all a lot easier to summon than fusion monsters, and as these new mechanics got introduced, the game became much more fast-paced, focusing on quickly bringing out these boss monsters with really high stats and strong effects, to the point that most modern duels are decided within the first few turns. As a consequence, many players who return to the game, having not played since they were children, are understandably pretty frustrated since the game they come back to holds little resemblance to the game they remember. And so, these players will often only seek out games which, through mutual agreement of the two parties, exclude Synchro, Xyz, Link, and Pendulum summoning, such as the relatively popular Goat Control format. This is how Orthodox churches calculate the date of Easter. When the rules for establishing when Easter would be celebrated was decided during the Council of Nicaea, Christians were all using the Julian calendar, which is the same calendar Orthodox churches are using to this day. If you remember from earlier, the Julian calendar is a solar calendar with 365 days in a year and an extra leap day every 4 years. But wait, isn't that the calendar we're all using now? You didn't consider the Gregorian reform. Stupid. In 1582, the Julian calendar was replaced with the Gregorian calendar, which is the actual calendar we're all using now. When the Julian calendar was made, it assumed that a solar year would contain 365.25 days, but frustratingly, It's actually closer to 365.2422 days. If this sounds like it's not a big deal, you're not paying attention. They changed the whole calendar over it. Of course it's a big deal. I told you to focus. Over the centuries, this rounding error caused the calendar to have too many days and, eventually, fall out of sync with the solar year, which would make Easter too far from the vernal equinox. And we can't have that. The Gregorian calendar reapproximated the year to have 365.2425 days, and would occasionally skip a leap year when the Julian calendar would not. It's easy to not know this because this has not and will not happen within any of your lifetimes. In the Gregorian calendar, a leap year is skipped any year that is evenly divisible by 100, unless it's also evenly divisible by 400, then it's not skipped. So, in the year 1900, it was not a leap year, but in the year 2000, it was, and there won't be another skip until the year 2100. So when the Gregorian calendar got adopted, the date was moved forward 10 days to account for the desynchronization that accrued over the past several hundred years. And since then, the Julian calendar has still been ticking away in the background, including leap days in 17, 18, and 1900, making it now a full 13 days behind the Gregorian calendar. So, for Orthodox churches deciding when to celebrate Easter, they still observe the ecclesiastical equinox on March 21st, but because of that 13-day difference, it isn't March 21st until it's April 3rd. By April 3rd, they've missed out on the March 25th full moon, so they have to wait until the next one, which is on Tuesday, April 23rd. The next Sunday after that is April 28th. Except Orthodox Easter isn't on April 28th, it's on May 5th. You didn't consider the Metonic cycle, did you? Stupid. Stay with me, I know you can do this. We're gonna figure out Easter together, I promise you we will, okay? Alright. Remember what I said about how the lunar cycle doesn't line up with the solar cycle? Well, about every 19 years it does. For example, on January 1st, 2014, it was a new moon. And the next time it'll be a new moon on January 1st will be in 2033. This is called the Metonic cycle. This is important because early on this Metonic cycle was calculated and used in conjunction with the Julian calendar to predict in advance when Easter would be on any year in the future. But, like the Julian calendar itself, the Metonic cycle being used was also not entirely accurate, and who would have guessed it would fall out of sync with the actual lunar cycle. Again, we all know when the full moon is going to be. It's going to be on March 25th, and then on April 23rd. But because of the busted Metonic cycle that Orthodox churches are still relying on despite everyone knowing that they're wrong, they don't have the full moon scheduled to occur until April 28th. Okay, so, again, Orthodox Easter follows the same rules as regular Easter. Wait for March 21st, wait for the full moon to happen, wait for the next Sunday, that's Easter. But because the Julian calendar is 13 days behind, you don't wait for March 21st, you wait for April 3rd, which is March 21st. Then you wait for the next full moon, which isn't on April 23rd, it's on April 28th. The moon is wrong, not you. Then the next Sunday after that, May 5th, is Easter. Like I said, this isn't all that complicated. It's pretty easy to figure out, and you don't even need to. The calendar will tell you when Easter is. You don't even really need a calendar, actually. You can just look it up. But, if I may, I'd like to propose a new process. You know, for thousands of years, Easter has been such a fickle, slippery holiday that we redid the whole calendar just to try to get a better hold of it. You got to keep track of the solar cycle, the lunar cycle, and the 7-day week, which isn't even based on anything, just entirely arbitrary, and none of these meaningfully relate to each other. Now, I'm not a pope, or a saint, or even a Christian. I'm just a humble, time-traveling pro wrestling space pirate whose best friend is the real actual devil who lives underground in hell. But I do have a 700,000 IQ, that's still canon, and I think I can figure out an easier way to decide when Easter is, so no one has to rely on Metonic cycles or algorithms, something that will satisfy all Easter celebrating people. It's on April 9th from now on. Yeah, I'm not standing anymore. Standing sucks, sitting is way better. I'm also not using the green screen anymore. Sorry.